Okay, today we are painting this beautiful photograph of these grapes. And I have edited the photo to make the composition more pleasing. The initial photograph was like this with way too much empty negative space, so I cropped it to be more like this, to be more interesting from a compositional standpoint. And this is the way we will paint it. I have traced it off for my students so that they can have a detailed drawing. I've also used this as my value study. So I look carefully at this and I identify my lightest lights and my darkest darks before I ever start painting. Normally I do a value study, just a loose study, and I will have my students do that, just to sketch in the darkest darks, fill in the darkest darks, and save the lightest lights so that they're always paying attention to the values. So I've taped it down to, this is Fabriano studio paper. It's only 25% cotton, so it does buckle a little bit, but it's what my students use in my classes if they're not using arches. So here I've masked off all the highlights and the lightest areas. I've mixed up my colors. So for the grapes, we have phthalo blue and Payne's gray. This is quinacridone rose and phthalo blue to make these violets. This is lemon yellow and quinacridone rose to make the oranges in the actual red grapes. Also pyro red and pyro red with Payne's gray. And we'll be making some other mixtures, but pretty much that's the basic colors we'll be using on this painting. Okay, I've wet my background. First thing we're going to do is to lay in our background, remembering that this dries darker than you see here, by about 25%. I'm basically just going around, and I'm going right over the stem. Just painting with from what I see here. It's going to be darker down here. Just laying in these washes. And it doesn't matter if it goes right into this blue down here, because we want a really soft edge here anyway. So this is just our first wash. So now we'll go into the brighter blue, which is over on this side. And if you go over into your subject matter, it doesn't matter at this point. Try not to, though. But you can go right over your reflections here in this glass tabletop. Then as we get down here, it gets much darker. Then it shifts to a more of the purple again over here. So painting around. It's easier if you turn your board. this is, okay, this is all reflection under here. The reason I go ahead and drop in the background first is because then it simplifies my subject matter. So I don't have to be trying to figure out what is background and what is subject matter as I'm painting. So there's our first initial wash. Nice and soft. We're going to dry that and we'll be back. Okay, I'm just making up some more washes. This is the phthalo blue. This is phthalo blue with a little bit of that quinacridone rose added for a slightly brighter color because this is a little too flat for me. Then I've taken and mixed it over here in a darker with a little Payne's gray to get this nice rich blue here. And I think I'm happier with that. So I'm going to lay in another wash. This time I am going to go straight in. I'm not going to wet the paper first. So I'm going in with this mixture, and I'm going to be rather random with this, a little warmer in some places and a little darker as it goes down. Over on this side it gets quite dark. Going around my subject matter and right through those. Anything that's darker than what I'm currently doing, I can just paint right through, and that really helps to I like that better, that color better. It helps it to be more vibrant, even with a little more pink in there, I think, in some of these areas, but we'll have to go back and gently add that. As long as this is still wet, you can go back in here. Once it starts drying on you, though, you have to be really careful. I think I like that better. Remember, it's the background, so the background doesn't have to be very busy. I want this darker at the base, though, the bottom down here. Then I'm going to go right into this bluer mixture back here, going around my subject. Through that stem, touching that. Because remember, I want this very soft. I've got a bead over here, so I'm okay over here. As long as I've got that bead, I'm good. So now I'm going to blow out my brush, and I'm going right into the brighter blue, right in here, because the light is hitting right here. The light's coming from this direction, so it's going to be more colorful over here. We have that kind of an angle. Then I'm going to go back into my darker blue here and carry that on down underneath here. And then as I transition over here, I'm going to come back up here. And this is very dark over here, so we're going to start pushing that darker here. And more violet. And I need to soften this edge right here. So let me just come in there. here. Let's see where the edge of that actually comes down like this here. Okay. We'll have to scrub out that last little bit right there, but that's no problem. Okay. Now we're going to suck up this water along this tape. Pressing down because we did get a dark edge down here. Remember, this is student grade paper. It's not going to be as perfect as your arches or your professional paper. It's more prone to error, to blossoms and unevenness. And but a lot of my students paint on this, so I wanted to do it on this paper just for that reason. Now, while this is still wet, I'm going to mix up some more of my purple. So a little more of my quinacridone rose and my phthalo blue. Wash that out. Get that darker here and a nice dark. I've got a cool dark and a cooler dark and a warmer dark here. So I want to desaturate all of this a little bit. So if I'm going to desaturate this really bright phthalo blue, I'm going to have to do it with a little bit of an orange, which I have over here, which I made up for the orange in that back grape back there. So if I add a little bit of that orange to it, it'll soften that blue. So now while it's still damp, I'm going to go in and define some of these a little more warm in that area. Define some of these shadows. But I want it to be soft. And I want some different colors in there. Because shadows are usually not just one color. Okay. And then over here, these are much more. Let me get a brush I can work with here. Okay. Let's get some more violet. This is much more of a violet here. There's also one here. I'm just defining where these shadows are so I don't lose them in my washes. Give some variation to those. I've also got one coming across here. It's a really nice violet shadow. Okay, this one actually should be a little rounder, but that's okay. That's all right. All right, over here, we've got one over here. Remembering we want to keep them soft. Then there's one behind here as well. Okay, so I think that's all my shadows. There's one, this is just really dark over here, so I'm just going to push this dark back up into here. Slight change of hue there. Leaving a little space there. That's better. Okay, so we definitely want this side lighter and brighter, and we want this darker and more muted. So now I'm going to go in here with more of a warm violet, So I need to have more of my pink in that mixture until I get a nice warm, there we go, that's what we want. Just to change it up a little bit, touch into that shadow there, just to give us some interest here. Actually, I'm going to pull it into some of these shadows, this color, so it's not so harsh. Okay. I think I'm liking that. I'm going to put a little more down here in this background, just of this warm violet. Just darkening everything up and kind of blending it all in there and just adding a little bit of the violet in these shadows so that it's not such a contrast here. Because remember, this is all shadow, so it should be very soft. Put a little bit more of it in here. Just so that it's soft. Okay, that's looking better. I'm liking that better. Let's push this darker right here. Again, and warmer. Always paying attention to where your shadows are, but also the temperature that's in your shadows. The shadow won't be all warm or all cool. It's going to be a combination. So now I want to work this blue again back here. Brighten this up some. So we're going to come back in here. Just make that a little brighter since that's where the sun, this is the sunlit side. Come in this way. And just kind of drop that in like that. Maybe just carry it through to the blue there. Continuity is really important here, so we'll just kind of carry it all the way through. Come back up here. A little bit brighter blue in here. Then we're going to get much darker. Even a little Payne's Gray in there. Just make that a little bit darker down in this corner. Generally, I do my corners darker in a vignette style. Just brings your eye into the actual painting. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm not loving this violet this color back here, but that is the color that's in the actual photograph. But we'll have to decide about this once we get the contrast in here. We'll see if trying to figure out what's going on right here. I think I need to clean this edge up right here. That is a little rough back there, but we can do that when we lay in the initial wash. So I can't do it now because it's wet. I think we will brighten this up just the tiniest bit, maybe with just a little more of this violet color, because it'll just be a little more pleasant. I am not one for these flat, muted colors. I like vibrant colors, so we'll go ahead and lay a wash around here and try to make this a little rounder there. Make that connect a little better. Yeah, that's going to be a better color. And you can add little mixtures of the blue in there just to make it interesting. Get a little darker at the top. This water really wants to catch on the edge of this tape, so I'm having to really watch that. Okay, so I like that better. That's more less flat and boring back there. Okay. All right, so let's dry that and see what we think about that. Sucking up any water that's crawling underneath that tape. And I think that's the subtleness we want in that background. So let's try this and we'll see what we have here. And I shouldn't have touched that. And if you do that, just go back in and soften that.